Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 8 of digital forensics and fact checking class at UIC. We're in the home stretch. Congrats, you've made it this far. So I just wanted to go over our schedule a little bit, talk a little bit about the final paper, kind of wrap this semester up. Um, uh, the final paper assignment is linked off of our schedule in the week 8 folder. You can also find it by just opening up the week 6 folder. It's in there. You should have turned in your fact-checking video, audio, and images assignment. If you're in my summer 2026 class, that would have been due August 3rd. If you're in the class in another semester, either fall or spring or summer 2027, you'll have a different deadline on there. Final grades, I'm going to go through, evaluate your papers, give you feedback on those, and get your final grades, overall grades back to you by the end of next week. I would say to, just fill in all your grades in that little grade sheet that I gave you guys early in the semester. You can kind of see where you're at going into the final paper. You've been kind of tracking it all semester. But if you have any, questions, just drop me an email. I can get back to you and jump on Zoom, whatever. I want to talk first before we get into the final paper assignment. A little bit about fact checking your boss. Many times when you are first out of school, you'll be in a position where you're working for someone, maybe at a nonprofit or corporate side, maybe even in a PR marketing firm. Maybe you'll have to edit a memo or a speech by your boss. Maybe it's something they've written an op-ed piece to go in the New York Times or something like that. And this can be a very delicate, tricky thing. It's something that I've had to do over a few times in my career, and you want to be very careful with it. The basic premise with fact checking, you're doing basic copy editing and cleaning up grammar and spelling. But with fact checking, you want to go out and if they claim a certain quote was attributed to a person, you want to go and fact check that. Sometimes you find that your bosses make factual errors in their writing. The thing you want to do is attack the topic, not the person. And the way I would always couch it is I would do it in person too. I wouldn't email it. I would often bring it in, the edited version, and say, hey, I made some tweaks to this. Tweaks is a lot less confrontational word than I made some edits to this, or I've caught some mistakes in this. Boy, that, it tends to set someone off if you come in and approach it that way. But hey, I've made some tweaks to this. I wanted you to take a look at them, before we move forward to make sure you're okay with them. It puts them in a position of power, which they are. They're your boss, and lets them know that they have the final say over everything because it's their name that's going on the speech or the memo or the thing. They have ownership of the press release going out, whatever you're editing. And it gives them ownership of it. So that's a really good approach to take. Do it in person. Say, hey, I made some tweaks to this. I just wanted to run them by you. And a lot of times as they're going through, oh man, I can't believe I made that mistake. And they kind of take ownership of it, rather than you saying, hey, I've found these mistakes. Hey, can you sign off on these? I've made some changes or some tweaks. I always like the word tweaks, because it looks like it's just little minor changes, even though maybe you've had to do a massive overhaul on it. I teach editing classes, so it's a skill that I've come up with over the years, both teaching and working in the industry. So that's one thing I wanted to touch on. And also too, many of you have enjoyed the fact checking work we've done this semester. Think about too, if you want to pursue a job, this is a job. There are a lot of jobs out there at many different levels. You can do it in local media, you can do it at the national level, international level. We've looked at several websites, fact-checking websites throughout the semester. And while this is kind of centered on journalism, fact-checking, exceeds, journalism. It goes into marketing and PR and, working for corporate communications. It covers many different areas. So, go onto LinkedIn, search for fact-checking jobs in there. There's several places that you can find those types of jobs, and there are many of them out there. It's one area of growth at a time when a lot of journalism jobs and communication jobs are going away. The ability to fact check is a skill that's very much needed right now, as well as the digital forensics skills too. So, search digital forensics, search fact checking, digital forensics in journalism, and those jobs will pop up. Also, too, if you're interested, reach out to me. I may hear of one that's come up. I've subscribed to a lot of journalism job e-newsletters and things like that. So stuff does come by my desk from time to time, or my email inbox from time to time. So let's go over the final paper assignment. You can access it by clicking on this little link in the week 8 schedule. It's also sitting in the week 6 folder. We went over this a couple weeks ago, but I do know it's due this week. At this point, you've got a pretty deep understanding of how fact checking and digital forensics work. So you're writing a 1,400 word essay on the live fact checking that was discussed in the Trump example from week 6, which is his 60 Minutes interview from November of 2025 with Nora O'Donnell. There were some political factors that were going on in both 60 Minutes and CBS News management. Some lawsuits that were going on, some firings, and Trump, agreed to do the interview largely because it was very friendly to him. Did all this influence Nora O'Donnell and the producers to be less combative and less confrontational in the interview? He makes several mistakes in the interview, says things that are untrue. You have the whole uncut video here that you can scrub through. I mean, I would listen to it pretty closely. You also have the transcript here. And be sure to watch this pretty early, and to get some background on it, some notes. Look at some of the ethics websites that we've talked about earlier in the semester, the Markula Center, the very Pointer, SPJ, Society of Professional Journalists, and their code of ethics. There's many others out there that you can look at, and did Nora O'Donnell, break some ethical rules in not fact checking him live during the interview? Also, think about debates, live political debates. Sometimes the hosts will or the moderators will fact check the candidates in real time. And a lot of the candidates have come back and fired back at them and say, no, you can't do that because that's influencing voters. You're trying to control the debate and control the election. Whereas others say, hey, we're just fact checking so the public has accurate knowledge. And we've got to weigh those two things, and that's part of this paper. Can it be viewed as shaping an election if it's done during a debate? It's an interesting question. So you can work that in as well. But this, the focal point is on that CBS interview. And we've given you 3 fact checks here. You can look for others as well. Newsweek, CNN, and PolitiFact. Did fact checks after the interview to give you a little context about what was missing or what was wrong in the interview. So keep the paragraph short. You want to keep them around 2 to 3 sentences per paragraph. Put a title at the top of your paper that's about 6 to 9 words long. You always want to have a title on it. No bibliography. Instead, build the hot links and attribution in the paper that look like this. We've talked about this earlier in the semester. According to the 2023-2024 Pew Research Center Religious Landscape Study, 62% of all U.S. citizens identify as Christians. You just hot link and attribute the information, and then hot link to the study itself, or the new fact check, or whatever you're linking off to. You must attribute all information in the paper, and keep the paragraphs flush left with a blank line between the paragraphs. You no need to indent. Typically, this is for digital production. I want to get you kind of in the habit of writing in that format, because you'll be doing a lot after you graduate. If you're in my summer 2026 8-week course, the paper's due Wednesday, October 5th, August 5th at noon. And email it to me as an editable Google Doc. That's very important that it's an editable Google Doc to my mikereilley1@gmail.com. If it's late, it's a 0 grade. I don't want to do any extensions on this. You've had some time to work on it. So, 1,400 words, it isn't that much really. I mean, you should be able to generate quite a bit. Go out and do research on the topic. I'm sure others have written about this topic. Use that as part of your research and link off to it. But the editable Google Doc is important. Don't send me a Word doc or, God forbid, a Microsoft OneDrive link or anything like that. Editable Google Doc And to create a Google Doc, it's pretty simple. You can go in and type docs.new. And then when you're done writing it, you always make sure you title it up here in the upper left. When you're done, you just hit the share button, share it with me, give it a title, just name mine practice doc, and then save it. And then you would save it with Mike Reilley. You type in my Gmail address, and then anyone, you can leave it on restricted, but you can do anyone with a link can add it. And then, copy the link so you save it and click done, and then you'll send that link to me. When you hit done, you have my email address up here. Um, so got a bunch of student names popping up. Mike Reilley one at gmail.com. And then it'll pop in. It won't do it for me because it's my personal email address, and I'm the one that created the doc, so that's why it's confused. Then you'll just hit done and you'll send me the document. You can add a little note with it too. That'll pop up as well. So hope you've enjoyed this semester. I've enjoyed having you. I do teach classes in person in the fall and spring semester. So if you want to take another class with me, feel free. Just check the course schedules. I teach a lot of Tuesday, Thursday morning into early afternoon, all kinds of different topics: digital journalism, data journalism, sports journalism, editing, AI in journalism, which is an interesting course. So hopefully you got something useful out of this class, and do stay in touch beyond today. And don't forget to get that final paper in. Thanks, everyone. Take care.